Today, we're gonna very quickly edit a photo of my family. What I really wanna focus on is getting the shadows removed from the faces so that way you can see them. And then maybe dealing with some of these highlight issues and then adding a style of a LUT over the entire image just to, build some color cohesion in there. So first thing we're gonna start off with is the camera profile. I think I'm gonna go with camera portrait. You know what? I like ON1 portrait. I like the contrast that it brings. I'm gonna hit AI auto because for me, in the quick edits, if you wanna edit quickly, using AI auto is probably one of the best solutions that you have available. It does make the photo a little bit too blue for my liking. Yeah, so I'm gonna bring the warmth up. And then I'm gonna bring down my black slider to bring some natural contrast. I'm gonna reduce vibrance on the skin, and then I'm just going to bring up the vibrance just a touch. And I don't know if I really want to have this desaturated look. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, so I'm just going to pull that like so. And now it is time to deal with these highlights. I'm gonna go to effects, hit add filter, and I'm going to grab a tone enhancer. And what I'm doing right now is just pulling down on my highlights until I see the look that I want. And I'm not seeing it, so now I'll pull down on the exposure. And I think, no, they're not burned. So should have, there's just a lot of highlights over here on our arm. And when you pull them down too far, it gets a little crazy. Pull up on the compression just a bit, see if I can get some of that separation going. Let's see if I can tone it in the curve. Now it's starting to turn red. We don't want that. That might work. All right, so once you have your adjustment, all right, now what you're gonna do is click on the mask, hit lumen, and then hit the O key so you can see what you're doing. And if you're not familiar with luminosity mask, very simply, it targets the brightness values of your photo, and it allows you to really hone in, for my instance, is on these bright areas. So as I pull up on the shadows, I'm removing the adjustment even more from the shadows. So I'm introducing more dark information into the image until I start to get this good selection. I'm really only looking at this area right here because the background, if I want to add in those highlights again, I can easily mask that out. I'm really only looking at this area. I want to make this look as natural as possible. And this is the reason why you use luminosity mask, or at least why I do. And then you find that middle gray point, right? Which I think this is it. And I'm gonna try and target a little bit more on that skin. And one thing that I would recommend, and I'll show this, is when you do a luminosity mask for people, always feather it. The reason for that is you see how harsh these lines are. That could be good for landscape or product, but doesn't really work well with people. But when you feather something, it spreads out that adjustment. It makes it look so much more natural. So this is before the adjustment. This is after the adjustment. We start to bring back some of the detail in the skin and reduce some of those highlights. They're not completely gone. That is the problem with sitting directly in the sun. I did not do a very good job at selecting the location this time around, but sometimes this is just what you're faced with. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is add another tone enhancer, and we are going to adjust the brightness values of their faces. Now this one I'm actually going to paint in. I'm gonna open up the shadows, and we'll bring the opacity all the way up, because I will just adjust this using the and do this every time. You got to invert your mask in order to paint it in on just the area that you want it to be. Okay, always remember to invert your mask if you want to paint in. Now on my youngest daughter's face, I'm not sure I need 100% opacity, so I'm just going to paint that in with a slightly lower opacity, and then we will bring down bring up the exposure, because we want to see their faces, right? We want to see their faces, and I think that will do quite well. You see how it's just brightening their faces a little bit. It's subtle. You don't really notice that there was an adjustment. And I also like to throw in some detail whenever I brighten faces. Just brings a little bit more awareness. Now, the last thing that I'm going to do for this photo, because the background is nice, or you know what, better yet, we're going to go with a LUT, and I'm going to go with my travel LUT. Not that one, travel. And let's see what we have inside of travel. Now, these LUTs, I like this one. So travel 5 looks good. These LUTs you may or may not have, but whenever you use a LUT, my recommendation is you're not looking at it, like I'm not going to leave this at 100%. I'm going to pull the opacity of this down. I like this one, so 5 and 16. I also like this one. This is like a teal and orange kind of look, but I don't like what it's doing to their clothes, so probably not going to go with that one. This one is nice. 12 or 20, I mean 5, 16, and 20. I think those are good enough, so let's go with 20. Pull down the opacity, and I like what it's doing there. So I think I'll just go with that one. Now we'll go to local adjustments, and because the background is nice, but I want the focus to be on my family, I'm going to add a vignette. I'm going to hit the letter M, click on them, change this to a vignette, pull this over, and I want to angle it a little bit. I like to change the direction of my vignette sometimes, and I'll just pull that out to about there. And now the focus of attention is on them. And sometimes what I even do is pull down on the structure of my vignettes. And what this allows is for the background to kind of be less important, right? I want the focus of my family to be important, and then everything else kind of just fades to the background. Now, I could very easily paint those guys out, but instead of painting them out, what I'm going to do is go to the crop tool, keep it on original aspect ratio, and just bring this down to about there. And that's probably a little bit better composition anyway. And now I have a clean image of my family. Here is the before, which a little dull, dark faces, and then here's the after. It's a lot brighter, something that we would be able to use and share with friends and family. If you like the content, smash the like button. If you want to see more, check the video on the screen. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. Till next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.